Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked across his ranch on New Montana. The red dirt stretched for miles under the purple sky. 3 suns hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren land. His cattle grazed on the tough blue grass that grew in patches. These were not earth cattle, but a mixed breed that could survive the harsh conditions. Jake had been alone on this ranch for 8 years now. His wife Linda had died in a mining accident when the tunnels collapsed. Since then, he worked the land by himself. At 52 years old, his hands were rough and his back ached most days. But the work kept him busy and helped him forget the loneliness that ate at him. The ranch sat on the edge of the Crimson Badlands. Most people stayed away from this area. Wild creatures lived in the red rocks and deep caves. The weather changed fast and could kill a person if they were not careful, but Jake liked it here. The danger kept unwanted visitors away. Tonight felt different, though. The air was thick and heavy. Lightning flashed in the distance. A storm was coming. Jake hurried to get his animals into the shelters. The wind picked up and blew dust everywhere. He pulled his hat down tight and ran toward the main house. His security system started beeping. Something had crossed the outer fence. Jake checked the monitors but saw only static. The storm was messing with the signals. He grabbed his rifle and put on his heavy coat. Whatever was out there would have to wait until morning if it was smart. But the beeping would not stop. Jake cursed under his breath and opened the front door. The wind hit him like a wall. Rain started to fall in big drops that stung his face. He could barely see 10 feet in front of him. The security lights swayed back and forth in the wind. Jake followed the fence line toward where the alarm was coming from. His boots sank into the mud with each step. Lightning lit up the sky and he saw it. A small metal object had crashed near his property line. It looked like an escape pod. Smoke was coming from one end. He ran toward the crash site. The pod was no bigger than a closet. The metal was hot to touch even in the rain. Jake found a handle and pulled. The door was stuck. He used his rifle as a lever and finally got it open. Inside was a child, but not a human child. The being was small with silver blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Its eyes were large and the color of pearls. It wore a torn gray jumpsuit. Blood came from cuts on its arms and face. Jake had seen pictures of different alien races. This was a Zilani. They were one of the few species that humans had peaceful contact with. But what was a Zilani child doing way out here in a crashed pod? The child opened its eyes and looked at Jake. Fear filled those strange pearl-colored eyes. It tried to back away but was too weak. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. The child spoke in broken human language. Its voice was soft like wind through leaves. Please no hurt. Please no send back. He hurt us. Many hurt us. Jake felt his heart clench. The terror in the child's voice was real. Someone had hurt this little one badly. He reached into the pod and carefully lifted the child out. It weighed almost nothing. Jake wrapped his coat around the small body. "I won't hurt you," Jake said. "You're safe now." The child looked up at him with those large eyes. "Promise no. Send back to bad man. Please promise." "I promise," Jake said without thinking. He did not know what he was promising, but the words came out anyway. Jake carried the child back to his house. The storm was getting worse. By the time they reached the front door, both were soaked through. Jake laid the child on his couch and got towels. The cuts needed to be cleaned and bandaged. As Jake worked, the child stayed very still. It watched his every move with those pearl eyes. When Jake touched a bad cut, the child made a small sound but did not pull away. It had learned not to resist when adults handled it roughly. This made Jake angry. What kind of monster hurt children? Any children. It did not matter if they were human or alien. A child was a child. "What's your name?" Jake asked as he put a bandage on the child's arm. "Kess," the child whispered. "Well, Kess, I'm Jake. You can stay here as long as you need to." Kess looked confused. "You no give me back. Why? I not your kind." Jake paused. Why was he helping? He had been alone for so long. He avoided people and problems. But looking at this scared child, he could not turn away. Because it's the right thing to do, Jake said. That's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Kes closed its eyes. For the first time since Jake found it, the child looked peaceful. My people say humans are strange. They fight for others, even strangers, even different kinds. Maybe we are strange, Jake said. But some things are worth fighting for. Outside, the storm raged on. Jake made soup and gave Kes some clothes that were too big but warm and dry. The child ate slowly like it had not had good food in a long time. As the night went on, Jake learned more about Kes. The child came from a ship that was attacked. Bad people took many children. Human children, too. They were kept in cages and hurt for experiments. Kes had escaped during a fight but crashed here. The bad man was called the Collector. He took children from many worlds. Kes did not know his real name but described a human with cold eyes and metal hands. Someone who saw children as things to use instead of lives to protect. Jake felt old anger stir inside him. He had been a soldier once before he came to this ranch. He knew how to fight. But he also knew that one old rancher could not take on an organized group of criminals. Still, looking at Kes sleeping on his couch, Jake made a decision. This child would be safe, here, whatever it took. Whoever came looking would have to go through him first. The storm passed during the night. When Jake woke up, Kes was standing by the window looking at the sunrise. The child turned and gave him a small smile. "Thank you, Jake Morrison," Kes said. "You saved my life." Jake nodded. He did not know what would come next, but he knew his life had just changed forever. The lonely rancher was lonely no more. The next few days passed quietly on the ranch. Jake showed Kes around the property and taught him about the animals. The Zalani child was quick to learn and seemed to have a natural way with the machinery. When Jake struggled to fix a broken water pump, Kes touched it gently and somehow made it work again. "How did you do that?" Jake asked. Kes looked confused. "I just asked it to work better. It was sad because parts were not talking to each other." Jake stared at the pump that had given him trouble for weeks. Now it ran smooth and quiet. Kes could somehow communicate with machines in a way Jake had never seen. The child explained that his people could sense the electrical patterns in technology. To Kes, machines had simple feelings and needs. This gift helped around the ranch, in many ways. The automatic feeders worked better after Kes touched them. The security system stopped having false alarms. Even the old generator ran more efficiently. Jake found himself relying on the child's strange abilities. But Kes also had nightmares. Jake would wake to hear the child crying softly in the spare room. When Jake asked about the dreams, Kes would shake his head and not speak for hours. The fear was still too fresh and deep. Slowly over the following weeks, Kes began to tell Jake more about what had happened. The Collector was not just taking children for experiments. He was trying to combine different species to make something new, something stronger and smarter than any natural being. He'd take children because young minds change easier, Kes explained one evening as they sat on the porch. He put things in our heads, metal things that hurt and make us do what he wants. Jake felt sick to his stomach. How many children does he have? Many. Maybe 40 or 50. From different worlds. Human children, too. They cry the most because they not understand why family not come save them. This hit Jake hard. Human children trapped and tortured while their families probably thought they were dead. The idea made his hands shake with anger. But what could one rancher do against an organization that could operate across multiple star systems? There was a girl, Kes continued. Emma. She was maybe 10 years human age. She helped me when guards hurt me bad. She said her daddy was soldier and would come find her, but she'd been there long time, too long. Jake stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. Emma. Some little girl named Emma was sitting in a cage right now waiting for a rescue that might never come. Her father probably searched everywhere and found nothing. Where is this place? Jake asked. Mobile station. Moves between asteroid fields. Hard to find, hard to get to. The Collector is smart and careful. But you escaped. Lucky. System failed during experiment. Doors opened for few minutes. I ran and found small ship. Barely got away before they fixed problem. Jake thought about this. If the facility was mobile and well hidden, finding it would be nearly impossible. Even if he could locate it, getting inside would be suicide. But the image of that little girl, Emma, kept coming back to him. Over the next week, Jake started making trips to town. He told Kes it was for supplies, but really he was asking questions. The few friends he had were mostly other ranchers or retired military like himself. None of them had heard of any children going missing recently. At the cantina, Jake carefully brought up the topic of disappearances. The bartender Tony mentioned that a family from the mining colony had lost their daughter about a year ago. Pirates, they said. But no ransom demand ever came. The family moved away, broken-hearted. Jake also visited the communications hub and sent some messages to old contacts from his military days. Most were still serving on other worlds. If there was an organized child trafficking operation, someone in intelligence would know about it. The answer came back faster than Jake expected. His old commander, Colonel Martinez, sent a coded message. Human children were disappearing across the sector. The authorities suspected organized crime but had no leads. Worse, some officials seemed to be blocking investigations. The message included a name, Dr. Marcus Webb. Former Earth scientist exiled for illegal human experimentation. Last known location was somewhere in the outer systems. The message ended with a warning. Webb had powerful friends who kept him protected. Anyone investigating too closely tended to disappear. Jake sat in his study that night reading the file on Webb. The man had once been respected for his work on genetic therapy, but his methods became more extreme over time. He started experimenting on prisoners, then poor people who could not fight back. When Earth authorities finally stopped him, he vanished into the outer colonies. Now he was back and taking children. The file included pictures of some of his work. Jake had to stop reading. The images made him physically sick. Webb saw living beings as raw materials for his twisted vision of improvement. Kes found Jake in the study the next morning. The child took one look at the files and backed away in terror. "That him?" Kes whispered. "That the collector. Dr. Webb." Jake closed the files quickly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to see that." But Kes stepped forward again. His pearl eyes were hard with determination. "You want to find him? You want to stop him?" "Maybe. I don't know yet." "You do know. I see it in your eyes." "Same look Emma's daddy probably have. You cannot let children suffer when you can help." Jake looked at this small alien child who understood him better than he understood himself. Kes was right. Jake could not ignore what he now knew. Somewhere out there, dozens of children were waiting for someone brave enough or stupid enough to try a rescue. "It would be dangerous," Jake said. "We might not come back. Better to try and fail than not try at all. That what humans do, yes. Fight even when cannot win." Jake smiled despite himself. "Where did you learn so much about humans?" "From you," Kes said simply. "You show me what human means protect others even when it hurt you." That afternoon, Jake started making plans. He would need a ship capable of long-range travel, weapons and supplies. Most importantly, he would need to find Webb's current location. The mobile station moved constantly, but it had to refuel and resupply somewhere. As he worked, Jake thought about his life before Kes arrived. He had been content to hide on his ranch and avoid the problems of the galaxy. But this child had reminded him of something important. Some fights were worth having even if you could not win. That evening, Jake and Kes sat on the porch watching the three suns set. The crimson Badlands glowed red in the distance. It looked beautiful and peaceful. "Jake," Kes said quietly, "when we go find other children, what happened to Ranch?" "I don't know. Maybe we won't come back to worry about it. But if we do come back, what then?" Jake thought about this. The ranch had been his refuge for 8 years. But it had also been his prison. Maybe it was time to make it something else, something better. Maybe we turn it into a place where children can be safe. All kinds of children. Kes smiled. It was the first real smile Jake had seen from the child since finding him. "I like that idea," Kes said. "Home for children who have no home." Jake nodded. It was a good dream. Now they just had to live long enough to make it real. 3 weeks after Kes arrived, Jake's security system detected ships entering the new Montana system. 3 vessels running dark without identification signals. They were scanning the planet's surface systematically. Jake knew what they were looking for. He called Kes inside and activated the ranch's defensive systems. These were military-grade shields and weapons he had installed after Linda died. Living alone on the frontier meant being ready for trouble. "They found me," Kes said quietly. His pearl eyes were wide with fear. "Maybe, but they haven't found this place yet." Jake watched the scanner displays. The ships were checking every settlement and ranch in their search pattern. They would reach his property in about 6 hours. Not much time to prepare. The communication system crackled to life. An official message from the Colonial Authority was broadcasting on all frequencies. A dangerous alien fugitive had escaped custody and was hiding somewhere on New Montana. All citizens were ordered to report any sightings. Immediately, a large reward was offered. Jake turned off the broadcast. "Custody, my ass," he muttered. "They're working with Webb." This complicated things. If the colonial government was involved, Jake could not trust local law enforcement. He was truly on his own now. One rancher and a scared child against an organization with ships and official backing. Jake spent the next few hours checking his defenses and weapons. The ranch's shield generator could stop most attacks for a while. The automated turrets would handle small ships, but if they brought serious firepower, his defenses would not last long. More importantly, Jake realized that hiding would only delay the inevitable. Webb would keep searching until he found Kes, and every day they waited, more children suffered in those cages. "Kes," Jake said as they ate lunch, "I need to ask you something important. Do you remember anything about how to find Webb's station?" The child thought carefully. "I remember some things. The ship I escaped in had navigation data, maybe still in wreckage." Jake had not thought to check the crashed pod for useful information. They went outside and walked to the crash site. The pod was burned and twisted, but some systems were still intact. Kes placed his hands on a control panel and closed his eyes. "Yes," he whispered. "Still here. Last 3 locations where station was hiding. Maybe I can find pattern." They brought the navigation data back to Jake's study. Using his ranch's computer, they plotted the coordinates on a star map. The 3 locations formed a rough triangle in the asteroid fields of the Kepler system. If Webb was following a pattern, his next stop would be the Kepler Belt mining station. "That's a refueling depot," Jake said. "Makes sense. A mobile station would need regular supplies. But getting to the Kepler system would require a ship capable of interstellar travel. Jake's ranch transport could barely make orbit. He would need something bigger and better armed. The answer came from an unexpected source. That evening, a single ship landed near Jake's property. It was a military transport flying Earth Defense Force colors. Jake grabbed his rifle, but the ship's pilot sent a friendly identification code. Colonel Martinez stepped out of the ship alone. Jake's old commanding officer looked older and grayer, but still carried himself like a soldier. The 2 men embraced, like the old friends they were. "Got your messages, Jake. Figured you might need backup." "Roberta, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be commanding a battle group near Centauri." Martinez smiled grimly. "Officially, I'm on leave visiting an old friend. Unofficially, I've been tracking this Webb character for months. He took an admiral's daughter from a school on Titan. That made it personal for a lot of people." Jake felt a surge of hope. "How many ships do you have?" "Just this one. Can't use official resources without proof. But this transport has military-grade weapons and shields. Should be enough for a reconnaissance mission." They spent the evening planning. Martinez had been gathering intelligence on Webb's operation for weeks. The man was definitely using the Kepler belt as a supply base. More importantly, several children from prominent Earth families had disappeared recently. People with enough influence to demand action. "The problem is jurisdiction," Martinez explained. Webb operates in neutral space. Earth authorities can't touch him legally. But if someone happened to rescue those children during a private mission, well, nobody would ask too many questions. Kes listened to the planning with growing excitement. You really going to try rescue everyone? We're going to do more than try, Jake said. We're going to succeed. The next morning brought more ships to the new Montana system. This time they were colonial security vessels searching more aggressively. Jake's ranch was definitely on their list of places to check. Time to go, Martinez said. My ship is faster and better armed than anything they have. Once we're in hyperspace, they can't follow. Jake gathered his weapons and personal items. As they prepared to leave, he took one last look around the ranch. It had been his home for 8 years, the place where he grieved for Linda and learned to live alone. Now he was leaving it behind to save children he had never met. Will you miss it? Kes asked. Maybe. But home isn't a place, it's the people you care about. They boarded Martinez's ship as the colonial security vessels approached. The transport lifted off smoothly and accelerated toward orbit. Below them, Jake could see the security ships converging on his ranch. They would find it empty. In hyperspace, Jake and Martinez reviewed everything they knew about Webb's operation. The mobile station was heavily defended but designed for research, not combat. Its shields and weapons were defensive only. The real challenge would be getting close enough to board it. The station has to drop shields to dock with supply ships, Martinez explained. That's our window. We go in fast and hard while they're vulnerable. Kes studied the tactical displays with surprising understanding. I know the inside layout, can guide you to where children are kept, but guards will fight hard to stop escape. Let them try, Jake said. I didn't come this far to back down now. The hyperspace journey to Kepler's system took 18 hours. During that time, Jake cleaned his weapons and prepared his gear. He had not been in combat for over a decade, but the skills came back quickly. Muscle memory and training that never really went away. Martinez ran them through the assault plan repeatedly. They would have maybe 30 minutes from the time they breached the station until reinforcements arrived. 30 minutes to find and evacuate 50 children while fighting trained guards. The odds are not good, Martinez admitted. Since when do humans worry about odds? Jake replied. We do what's right regardless of the chances. Kes nodded seriously. That's why other species respect humans. You fight for others even when fighting is stupid. Jake laughed. Maybe it is stupid, but some things are worth being stupid for. As they dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Belt, long-range sensors detected Webb's station docked with a mining platform. Supply ships were transferring cargo and fuel. Perfect timing. This is it, Martinez said. Last chance to change your mind. Jake checked his weapons one final time. Those children have been waiting long enough. Let's go bring them home. The transport accelerated toward the mining platform. In the distance, Webb's research station looked small and innocent, but Jake knew the horrors hidden inside its metal walls. Today, those horrors would end. The approach to Webb's station required careful timing. Martinez piloted the transport to look like another supply ship making a routine delivery. The station's sensors showed normal traffic patterns. Several cargo vessels were docked and transferring supplies. Jake watched the tactical display as they got closer. The research station was larger than he expected. 3 main sections connected by tubes, with docking ports along the central hub. Defensive turrets were visible but not currently active. There, Kes pointed to a section of the station. That where they keep children. Lower level, section C. Heavy security but only 2 ways in or out. Martinez studied the layout. We dock at port 7. That puts us closest to your target area. Jake, you and Kes go for the children. I'll handle the control room and try to disable their communications. What about the guards? Jake asked. Station security is maybe 20 people. Most will be busy with the supply operation. But they're professionals, not amateurs. Expect heavy resistance once the alarm sounds. The transport approached docking port 7. To outside observers, it looked like a routine cargo delivery. Martinez had forged the proper identification codes and manifests. The station's traffic control cleared them for docking without suspicion. As the airlock sealed, Jake felt the familiar calm that came before combat. His hands were steady as he checked his rifle and ammunition. Beside him, Kes was nervous but determined. The child had insisted on coming along to guide them to the prisoner area. "Remember the plan," Martinez said quietly. "In and out fast. If something goes wrong, we retreat to the ship and try again later." "Nothing will go wrong," Jake said. "Those children are coming home today." The airlock opened into a maintenance corridor. The station hummed with normal activity. Workers moved, cargo and performed routine tasks. Nobody paid attention to 3 more visitors among the dozens already aboard. Jake and Kes moved through the corridors following memorized directions. The station was cleaner and more modern than Jake expected. It looked like a legitimate research facility, not a prison for children. The appearance made the reality even more disturbing. They reached a security checkpoint leading to Section C. 2 guards sat behind a reinforced desk, checking identification. Jake approached casually, hiding his weapons under a work jacket. "Delivery, for Dr. Webb," Jake said, showing fake credentials. One guard looked at the papers while the other watched them suspiciously. Jake tensed, ready to act if their cover was blown. "Don't see any delivery scheduled for today," the first guard said. "Emergency medical supplies," Jake replied smoothly. "Came in on the last cargo run." The guards looked at each other uncertainly. In that moment of distraction, Jake moved. His rifle came up and both guards were down before they could reach their weapons. Quick and quiet. Kes worked at the security door using his strange ability with technology. The lock clicked open after a few seconds. Beyond was a long corridor, lined with doors. Each door had a small window and an electronic lock. The first room they checked was empty. The second contained a young human girl sitting on a narrow bed. She looked up with hollow eyes when Jake opened the door. This was Emma, the girl Kes had told him about. "Are you here to take me home?" she asked in a small voice. "Yes," Jake said. "We're taking all of you home." Emma's face lit up with hope and disbelief. "Are you a soldier like my daddy?" "Something like that. Can you walk?" "I think so. They didn't hurt me too bad this time." Jake's anger flared at those words, but he pushed it down. Time for anger later. Now he needed to focus on the rescue. They moved from room to room, opening doors and gathering children. Human children, alien children, all bearing the signs of Webb's experiments. Some had surgical scars. Others had strange implants that would need medical attention. All were weak and frightened, but able to move. By the time they reached the end of the corridor, Jake counted 43 children. More than Kes remembered. Webb had been busy collecting new subjects. "Stay close together," Jake told them. "We're leaving now, but it might get dangerous. Do exactly what I say." The children nodded silently. They had learned to follow orders without question during their captivity. Jake hated seeing that broken compliance in their eyes. The return journey was more difficult with so many children. They moved slowly through the maintenance corridors. Jake sent Kes ahead to scout while he brought up the rear. So far, their presence had not been detected. That changed when they were halfway back to the docking port. Alarms started blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. Over the intercom, Webb's voice announced a security breach in Section C. "Multiple prisoners have escaped. All security teams respond immediately. Seal all exits and begin systematic search." Jake heard running footsteps approaching from multiple directions. The guards had discovered the unconscious security checkpoint and were mobilizing fast. "This way," Kes called, leading them down a side corridor. "Emergency route to docking ports." They ran now, 43 children and 1 determined rancher racing through the station's corridors. Behind them, Jake could hear pursuit getting closer. The guards were organized and knew the station layout better. The first security team caught up with them at a corridor junction. 3 guards in combat armor with military weapons. They ordered the group to stop and surrender. Jake stepped between the guards and the children. His rifle came up and he fired without hesitation. The confined space worked in his favor. The guards went down quickly, but not before one managed to return fire. A bullet grazed Jake's shoulder, spinning him around. Pain flared, but he stayed on his feet. The children looked at him with fear and awe. They had never seen an adult fight to protect them before. "Keep moving," Jake shouted. They reached the docking area as more alarms sounded. Martinez's transport was ready with engines warming up, but between them and safety stood 6 more guards in a defensive position. "Surrender now, and no one else. Gets hurt," the lead guard called. Jake looked at the children clustered behind him. Emma was holding the hand of a small alien child who could barely walk. Others were supporting the weakest among them. All of them looked at Jake with desperate hope. "Counteroffer," Jake replied. "Get out of our way and you live through this." The guards opened fire. Jake dove for cover and returned fire while the children cowered behind cargo containers. Bullets sparked off metal walls. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Jake was outnumbered and outgunned, but he had something the guards did not have. He was fighting for something more important than his own life. The guards were just doing a job. Jake was saving children. One by one, Jake's superior shooting skills and desperate determination won out. The guards fell back or fell down. When the firing stopped, the way to the transport was clear. "Run," Jake yelled to the children. "Get to the ship." They streamed past him toward safety. Emma paused beside Jake's position. "Thank you," she said simply. Jake nodded. "Tell your daddy I said hello." As the last child boarded the transport, Jake heard more guards approaching. Martinez appeared in the airlock with a heavy weapon. "Time to go, amigo," he called. Jake ran for the ship as Martinez laid down covering fire. Bullets chased him across the docking bay. He dove through the airlock just as it sealed shut. The transport undocked and accelerated away from the station. Through the viewports, Jake could see Webb's security ships launching in pursuit, but Martinez's military transport was faster and more maneuverable. In the passenger compartment, 43 children sat in shocked silence. They were free for the first time in months or years. Some were crying, others just stared in disbelief. Jake slumped in a seat, exhaustion hitting him now that the immediate danger was past. His shoulder wound was bleeding but not serious. Kes appeared with a medical kit and started cleaning the injury. "We did it," the alien child said quietly. "We saved them all." Jake looked around at the rescued children. They would need medical care and counseling. Finding their families would take time, but they were safe now. That was what mattered. "Yeah," Jake said. "We did it." But even as the transport jumped to hyperspace, Jake knew their troubles were not over. Webb was still free. The organization behind him was still operating. This rescue was just the beginning of a larger fight. Still, 43 children would go home to their families. That made everything worthwhile. The transport ship carried them toward the nearest Earth Defense Force station. During the 3-day journey, Jake learned more about what the children had endured. Their stories made his blood boil with anger. Webb had treated them like laboratory animals, running painful experiments and procedures. Emma stayed close to Jake during the trip. The 10-year-old girl had been Webb's prisoner for over a year. She told Jake about her father, Major David Cooper, who commanded a Marine unit on Europa. Webb had taken her from a school field trip. "Daddy told me soldiers would always come for me," Emma said. "He was right, wasn't he?" "Yeah, he was right," Jake replied. The other children came from many different worlds and species. There were humans from Earth colonies, young Zalani-like, Kes, and children from species Jake had never seen before. All had been taken from their families and used for Webb's twisted research. Martinez spent most of the journey sending coded messages to his contacts in Earth Military Command. The rescue had been successful, but they needed official protection for the children. Webb's organization had influence in many governments. Without proper support, the children might be handed back to their captors. On the second day, Kes made an important discovery. While helping Jake tend to the other children, the young Zalani noticed something strange about several of them. They had small scars behind their ears where something had been surgically implanted. "Control devices," Kes explained. Webb put them in children who tried to escape, made them obey commands and feel pain if they resisted. Jake examined the scars carefully. The implants were gone now, probably removed before the children were transported. But the psychological damage remained. These children flinched when adults raised their voices. They asked permission before eating or moving around the ship. The youngest victim was a human boy named Peter, who could not have been more than 6 years old. He had been taken from his family's farm on New Texas. The child barely spoke and jumped at sudden sounds. Webb had broken something fundamental in the boy's spirit. Jake spent hours sitting with Peter, talking quietly and sharing stories about ranch life. Slowly, the boy began to respond. By the 3rd day, Peter was following Jake around the ship like a lost puppy seeking protection. "You're good with them," Martinez observed. "They just need someone who won't hurt them," Jake replied. "Most of these kids haven't had that in a long time." As they approached the military station, Martinez received new orders. Instead of docking normally, they were directed to a secure bay used for classified operations. A full medical team was waiting along with intelligence officers and child welfare specialists. The children were taken for immediate medical evaluation, while Jake and Martinez were debriefed by military intelligence. The information they provided about Webb's operation was invaluable. For the first time, authorities had solid evidence of the scope of his crimes. Colonel Sarah Blake ran the intelligence division at the station. She listened carefully as Jake described the rescue and what they had learned about Webb's methods. "This is bigger than we thought," Blake said. "Webb isn't working alone. He has backing from major corporations and possibly government officials. The children you rescued come from influential families. Someone wanted them specifically." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Think about it. A Marine commander's daughter, the son of a wealthy mining executive. These aren't random kidnappings. Webb was targeting children whose disappearance would cause maximum psychological damage to their parents." Jake felt sick as the implications sank in. The children had been taken not just for experiments, but as weapons against their families. Parents in key positions might make bad decisions if their children's lives were threatened. The medical evaluation revealed the full extent of Webb's cruelty. Many children had been subjected to genetic modifications. Others had experimental drugs in their systems. All would need extensive treatment to undo the damage. But the psychological evaluation was even more disturbing. Child psychologist Dr. Lisa Chen explained that Webb had been trying to break the children's sense of identity and belonging. He wanted to create a generation of beings loyal only to him. "The good news is that children are resilient," Dr. Chen said. "With proper care and support, most will recover fully, but it will take time." Jake visited the medical ward daily during their stay at the station. The children were getting excellent care, but many were still afraid. They trusted Jake because he had rescued them. To them, he represented safety in a world that had become dangerous and unpredictable. Emma was recovering well physically, but still had nightmares. She asked Jake repeatedly when she could see her father. Major Cooper was being recalled from Europa, but the journey would take several days. "What if he doesn't recognize me?" Emma worried. "What if Webb changed me too much?" "Your father will know you," Jake assured her. "Parents always know their children no matter what happens." Kes was also struggling with the transition to safety. The young Zalani had been with Webb longer than most and had seen things that would haunt him forever. But he stayed close to Jake and helped care for the younger children. "What happens to us now?" Kes asked one evening. "You go home to your families," Jake said. "That's what this was all about. But I have no family left. Webb took me after my parents died in mining accident. You are my family now." Jake felt his throat tighten. He had not thought about what would happen to the children who had no families to return to. Kes was not the only orphan among the rescued group. Several others had lost their parents before Webb took them. The answer came from an unexpected source. As word of the rescue spread through official channels, requests for adoption and fostering came pouring in. Military families, civilian families, even alien families offered to take in the children who had no homes. The response amazed everyone at the station. Humans from across the galaxy volunteered to care for alien children they had never met. Alien. Families offered homes to human children. Species barriers seemed to disappear when it came to protecting the innocent. "I've never seen anything like it," Colonel Blake told Jake. "Usually, adoption across species lines is rare and complicated, But everyone wants to help these children. Jake understood. The rescue had touched something fundamental in decent beings everywhere. The sight of children being tortured for scientific advancement horrified anyone with a conscience. Offering homes to the survivors was a way to fight back against that horror. But the most important moment came when Major Cooper arrived to collect Emma. Jake watched through the medical ward window as father and daughter were reunited. The tough Marine broke down and cried when he saw his little girl. Emma ran into his arms like she had never doubted he would come. "Thank you," Cooper said to Jake later. "I don't have words for what you've done. Just take care of her." Jake replied, "That's thanks enough." One by one, the children were reunited with families or placed in new homes. The medical staff worked miracles repairing the physical damage Webb had caused. The psychological healing would take longer, but every child was making progress. Jake found himself in an unusual position. Several families offered him rewards for rescuing their children. Military command wanted to give him medals and commendations. News services wanted interviews about the heroic rescue. He turned them all down. The children's safety was reward enough. Their smiles when they saw their parents again were worth more than any medal. But Jake did accept one offer that surprised everyone. The Earth Colonial Authority offered him a new job. They wanted him to head a special task force dedicated to fighting child trafficking across the galaxy. It would mean leaving the ranch permanently and taking on dangers far worse than what he had already faced. "Think about it," Colonel Blake urged. "We need someone with your skills and determination. Webb is still out there. His organization is still operating. You could save thousands more children." Jake was tempted. The work was important and necessary. But as he looked around the medical ward at children still recovering from their ordeal, he realized what he really wanted to do. "I have a better idea," Jake said. "What if instead of hunting traffickers, we create a place where rescued children can heal? A place where they can be safe while they recover and find new families." The idea took shape over the following days. Jake's ranch on New Montana would become a refuge for children rescued from trafficking operations. It would have medical facilities, counseling services, and educational programs. Most importantly, it would be a place where children could remember what it felt like to be safe and loved. Kes was the first to volunteer to help make it happen. 6 months after the rescue, Jake stood on the porch of his rebuilt ranch looking out at a very different landscape. Where once there had been only empty fields and silence, now children's voices filled the air. The Morrison Children's Refuge had become home to 37 children from 12 different species. The transformation had been remarkable. Earth Colonial Authority provided funding and resources to convert the ranch into a proper care facility. Medical wings were added along with classrooms and recreational areas, but Jake insisted on keeping the working ranch portions intact. The children needed to learn that they could build and create, not just survive. Kes had become Jake's unofficial second-in-command. The young Zalani's ability to communicate with technology proved invaluable in running the complex facility. More importantly, his gentle nature and understanding of trauma helped the newest arrivals adjust to safety. Today marked a special milestone. Emma Cooper was visiting with her father for the dedication ceremony. The girl who had spent over a year in Webb's cages was now healthy and smiling again. She attended a normal school on Europa and was learning to be a child again. "Jake," Emma called as she ran across the yard. "Daddy says you're getting a medal from Earth Command." Jake smiled and ruffled her hair. "It's not about medals, kiddo. It's about making sure no more children go through what you did." Major Cooper joined them on the porch. The Marine officer looked relaxed and happy for the first time since Jake had met him. "The ceremony is just a formality, Jake. What you've built here is the real recognition." The refuge operated on a simple principle. Children who had been broken by cruelty needed time and safety to heal. Some stayed for weeks while their families were located. Others, like Kes, had made the refuge their permanent home. All were welcome for as long as they needed. Dr. Chen had moved from the military station to become the refugee's head counselor. Her work with the children was showing remarkable results. Even the most traumatized were beginning to trust adults, Again, and form healthy relationships. The key is consistency, she explained to Jake. These children have learned that adults are dangerous and unpredictable. We have to prove over and over that we're different. Peter, the 6-year-old who had barely spoken when they rescued him, was now following Jake around the ranch, chattering constantly about the animals and machinery. The boy had adopted Jake as a surrogate father and was learning to read using stories about ranch life. But the refuge faced ongoing challenges. Webb was still free, and his organization continued operating. Intelligence reports suggested he had moved his base of operations deeper into neutral space where Earth authorities could not reach him. Worse, other trafficking rings had started copying his methods. Colonel Martinez visited regularly to update Jake on the search for Webb. The scientist had vanished completely after the rescue, taking his remaining resources and loyal followers with him. Several raids on suspected facilities had turned up empty. He's learned from what happened at Kepler, Martinez explained during one visit. No more fixed bases or predictable patterns. He's gone completely mobile. This frustrated Jake immensely. Every day Webb remained free meant more children were suffering. But Jake had learned that hunting monsters was not his greatest strength. Building safe places for their victims was where he could make the biggest difference. The refuge had already processed over 200 children in its first 6 months. Some stayed briefly while others needed months of care. Each child who left, healthy and whole, was a victory against the darkness that people like Webb represented. Jake's favorite part of each day was the evening gathering in the main hall. Children from dozens of worlds would share stories about their cultures and families. Human children learned alien songs while alien children played human games. The diversity was beautiful and proof that intelligent beings could live together peacefully. One evening, a new arrival joined the gathering. 7-year-old Beth Williams had been rescued from a trafficking ring operating near the Vega system. She was human but had been held captive so long she was afraid of other humans. Only the alien children could get close to her at first. "Why are the different ones nicer?" Beth asked Jake during her first week. "They're not different, honey. They're just children like you. Children understand what it means to be scared and alone." Slowly, Beth began to trust the human staff as well. Jake watched her progress with satisfaction. This was why the refuge existed, to give children like Beth time to remember that not all adults were monsters. The success of the Morrison Refuge had inspired similar projects across human space. Other former military personnel were converting ranches and farms into safe houses for rescued children. The network was becoming a powerful force against trafficking operations. But the most important success story was sitting beside Jake on the porch as they watched the sunset. Kes had grown taller and stronger over the past months. The fear that had once dominated his pearl-colored eyes was gone, replaced by confidence and purpose. "Do you ever regret not going back to your own people?" Jake asked. "This is my people." "Now," Kes replied. "All the children here are my family. You taught me that family is not about biology. It is about choosing to care for each other." Jake nodded. The alien child understood something that many adults never learned. Love was not limited by species or appearance. It was a choice that intelligent beings made to protect and nurture each other. The refuge had also attracted volunteers from across the galaxy. Former victims of trafficking came to help new arrivals. Scientists donated time to develop better treatments for trauma. Even former soldiers like Martinez took leave to provide security training. Jake often thought about the night Kes had crashed near his ranch. He had been a lonely man hiding from the galaxy's problems. That frightened alien child had changed everything by reminding him that some fights were worth having. News reports about the refuge's work had spread Webb's crimes to public attention. Galactic opinion was turning against the corporations and officials who had protected trafficking operations. Several high-ranking individuals had been arrested and their organizations dismantled. The broader impact went beyond just stopping criminals. The image of humans risking their lives to save alien children had shifted how other species viewed humanity. Where once humans were seen as aggressive newcomers, now they were recognized as protectors of the innocent. "You started something bigger than you know," Dr. Chen told Jake one day. Every child who leaves here healthy carries a piece of human values with them. They'll teach those values to their own children someday. Jake found this idea both humbling and inspiring. He had just wanted to save one scared child from the monsters who hurt him. But that single act of protection had grown into a movement spanning multiple star systems. As evening fell over the refuge, Jake made his usual rounds checking on the children. Some were doing homework in the study hall. Others were playing games or talking with counselors. All were safe and cared for. In the medical wing, Jake stopped to visit the newest arrivals. 3 children rescued just days ago from a facility near Proxima Centauri. They were still too traumatized to speak, but their eyes followed him with cautious hope. "It's going to be okay," Jake told them gently. "You're safe now. We'll take care of you until your families come." The children did not respond, but Jake saw something shift in their expressions. The first tiny crack in the walls their captivity had built around their hearts. It would take time, but those walls would come down eventually. Walking back to his quarters, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed. The lonely rancher was gone, replaced by someone with purpose and family. Dozens of children called him Uncle Jake and came to him with their problems and fears. It was not the life he had planned, but it was the life he was meant to live. Webb and his kind represented the worst of intelligent civilization, but the refuge and the children it protected represented the best: love, sacrifice, and the determination to protect the innocent from those who would harm them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and probably new children needing help. But Jake faced the future with confidence. He was no longer alone in the fight against darkness. An entire galaxy of decent beings had joined the cause, and it had all started with one small alien child begging not to be sent back to the monster who hurt him. 2 years after establishing the refuge, Jake received a message that changed everything. Intelligence operatives had finally located Webb's new base of operations. The scientist had established a massive facility in the Void Sector, a region of space beyond any government jurisdiction. Colonel Martinez delivered the news in person during one of his regular visits. He found Jake in the workshop teaching a group of older children how to repair farming equipment. The kids scattered when they saw Martinez's serious expression. "We found him, Jake. Webb is operating from a converted asteroid mining station in the Cerberus system. Our sources say he has over 200 children there now." Jake set down his tools and wiped grease from his hands. 200 children. The number hit him like a physical blow. In the time they had been building the refuge and helping individual victims, Webb had been expanding his operation dramatically. "How reliable is the intelligence?" Jake asked. "Very. One of his former assistants contacted us. Dr. Amanda Price worked for Webb until she realized what he was really doing. She escaped 3 months ago and has been providing detailed information about his current setup." Jake remembered the name from Webb's old research files. Price had been a legitimate scientist before getting involved with Webb's work. If she was willing to testify, it would provide crucial evidence for prosecution. "What's the plan?" Jake asked. Martinez hesitated. "That's the problem. The facility is too large and well defended for a small team assault. We would need a full military operation to take it down, but the Void Sector is neutral space. Earth? Command can't authorize an invasion without solid legal justification." Jake understood the politics involved. Governments moved slowly and carefully when it came to military action in disputed territory. While they debated jurisdiction and legal authority, 200 children suffered in Webb's cages. That evening, Jake called a meeting of the refuge's senior staff. Dr. Chen, Kess, and several volunteer coordinators gathered in his office to discuss the situation. The weight of decision pressed down on Jake's shoulders. "We can't wait for official action," Dr. Chen said bluntly. "Those children don't have time for political negotiations." Kess nodded agreement. "Dr. Price's information will not stay secret long. Webb will find out about betrayal and move operation again. This might be only chance to find him." Jake stared at the star charts Martinez had provided. The Cerberus system was 3 weeks' travel from New Montana. The asteroid facility was heavily armed and defended by professional soldiers. A direct assault would be suicide for a small team. But Jake had learned something important during his time running the refuge. He was not alone anymore. The network of safe houses and rescue operations had grown across human space. Dozens of former military personnel and civilian volunteers had joined the cause. What if we don't go alone? Jake said slowly. What if we coordinate multiple rescue teams hitting trafficking operations simultaneously? The idea took shape over the following days. Intelligence sources had identified several other major trafficking facilities in different systems. If rescue teams struck all of them at once, it would overwhelm the criminals' ability to respond and communicate. Martinez was skeptical when Jake presented the plan. You're talking about a coordinated military operation across multiple star systems. The logistics alone would be nightmare. Then we make it simple, Jake replied. Each team hits their target independently. No complex coordination or timing requirements. Just hit them hard and extract the children. The plan required recruiting teams from across the refuge network. Jake sent messages to every contact he had made over the past 2 years. Former soldiers, concerned parents, and alien allies who had been touched by the refuge's work. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within a week, Jake had commitments from 12 different teams willing to participate in simultaneous raids. Each team would target a different facility based on intelligence provided by Dr. Price and other sources. Jake would personally lead the assault on Webb's primary facility in the Cerberus system. Martinez volunteered his ship and crew for the mission. Kess insisted on coming along despite Jake's concerns about the danger. You need me, the young Zalani argued. I know Webb's methods and can communicate with any control systems. Plus, the children will trust me faster than they trust adult humans. Dr. Chen would remain at the refuge to coordinate medical care for rescued children from all operations. Emergency medical teams were positioned at military stations throughout the region to handle casualties and trauma cases. The preparation took 3 weeks. Jake drilled with Martinez's crew on assault tactics and ship operations. They studied detailed plans of the asteroid facility provided by Dr. Price. Every possible scenario was discussed and planned for. Meanwhile, other teams were making their own preparations. Captain Lisa Torres, a former Earth Navy officer, would lead an assault on a facility near Alpha Centauri. Major Sam Carter, recently retired from Colonial Marines, volunteered to hit a trafficking station in the Vega system. Each team was small, but composed of experienced fighters motivated by righteous anger. They were not professional soldiers anymore, but parents and citizens who had seen what trafficking did to children. Their determination made up for any lack of official military support. Dr. Price provided final intelligence updates just days before the operations began. Webb's facility was even larger than initially estimated. The converted asteroid contained laboratories, holding areas, and defense systems that could stop a small fleet. He's paranoid about security after your rescue at Kepler, Price explained, during a secure communication. The children are kept in the asteroid's core surrounded by multiple defensive layers. But I know the access codes and security protocols. Jake studied the facility blueprints with growing concern. Getting to the children would require fighting through armed defenders and multiple security checkpoints. Even with Price's inside knowledge, the mission bordered on impossible. But as Jake looked around the refuge at children who had been rescued from similar facilities, he knew they had to try. Every day of delay meant more suffering for Webb's current victims. The risk to the rescue teams was acceptable if it meant saving 200 innocent lives. The night before departure, Jake walked through the refuge one final time. Children were gathered in the main hall sharing stories and songs as they did every evening. The sound of their laughter reminded him why the upcoming mission was necessary. Emma Cooper had returned for a visit just in time to see Jake off. The now 12-year-old girl had grown confident and strong during her recovery. She gave Jake a fierce hug before he left. "Bring them all home," she whispered. "Just like you brought me home." Jake promised he would try. As Martinez's transport lifted off from New Montana, Jake watched the refuge disappear below them. The lights in the children's dormitories were still visible as they reached orbit. Kess sat beside him during the hyperspace jump to Cerberus system. The young Zalani had grown into a thoughtful teenager during their time together. His pearl-colored eyes held determination that reminded Jake of himself at that age. "Are you scared?" Kes asked quietly. "Terrified," Jake admitted. "But that's not going to stop us." "Good. Fear means you understand the danger. Only fools are not afraid when they should be." Jake smiled at the wisdom in those words. Kes had learned much during his time at the refuge. He understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. As they approached the Cerberus system, long-range sensors detected the massive asteroid facility. It was even more imposing than the intelligence reports had suggested. Defensive platforms surrounded the main station. Armed patrol ships moved in regular patterns. "That's our target," Martinez said grimly. "Any second thoughts about this plan?" Jake checked his weapons one final time. Somewhere inside that fortress, 200 children were waiting for rescue. Some had probably given up hope of ever seeing their families again. Others might not even remember what freedom felt like. "No second thoughts," Jake said. "Those kids have waited long enough." The transport altered course toward the asteroid's blind spot. In 18 hours, they would begin the most dangerous mission of Jake's life. Success would free hundreds of children and finally bring Webb to justice. Failure would likely mean death for the rescue team and continued suffering for their intended victims. But Jake had learned something important during his journey from lonely rancher to protector of children. Some fights were worth any risk. Some causes justified any sacrifice. The innocent deserved protection from those who would harm them, regardless of the cost to their protectors. Webb's reign of terror was about to end. The assault on Webb's asteroid facility began at dawn, ship time. Martinez brought his transport in fast and low, using the asteroid's rotation to stay hidden from the main sensor arrays. Jake and his team prepared for boarding action while Kes worked at a portable computer terminal. "Security grid is more complex than Dr. Price described," Kes reported. "Webb has added new defensive layers since she escaped, but I can find a path through the barriers." Jake checked his assault rifle and extra ammunition. The team was small but experienced. Besides Martinez and his crew, Jake had recruited 2 former colonial Marines and a demolitions expert. All had volunteered after hearing about the children trapped inside. The transport docked with a maintenance airlock on the asteroid's dark side. According to Dr. Price's intelligence, this section was used for supply deliveries and had minimal security. But as they prepared to board, proximity alarms started sounding throughout the facility. "They know we're here," Martinez said grimly. So much for surprise. Jake had expected this possibility. Webb was paranoid and careful after previous escapes. The facility would be locked down within minutes. But that also meant the children were trapped inside with no way out except through the rescue team. The maintenance corridor beyond the airlock was empty, but Jake could hear running footsteps and shouted orders echoing from deeper in the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in red shadows. Webb's security forces were mobilizing fast. "This way," Kes said, consulting the facility map on his portable unit. "Children are held in Section 7, 3 levels down. Dr. Price said there are maybe 40 guards total, but they have heavy weapons." The team moved quickly through service tunnels and emergency passages. Jake's military training came back automatically. Move fast, stay quiet, and hit hard when contact was unavoidable. The corridors were narrow and filled with pipes and conduits that provided cover. They encountered the first security checkpoint at the entrance to the main facility levels. 2 guards in combat armor were sealing blast doors and checking weapons. Jake's team took them down quickly and quietly before they could raise an alarm. But as they descended deeper into the asteroid, resistance increased. Groups of guards moved through the corridors searching for intruders. Jake's team had to fight their way past 3 separate security teams before reaching the holding area. The corridor leading to Section 7 was blocked by a heavy security door with multiple locks and sensors. Kes placed his hands on the control panel and closed his eyes in concentration. His strange ability to communicate with machines was their only hope of getting through quickly. "Almost there," Kes whispered. "But system is fighting me. Webb has added some kind of AI security that learns and adapts." Behind them, Jake could hear more guards approaching. The sound of boots on metal was getting closer. Whatever Kes was going to do, he needed to do it fast. The door locks clicked open just as the first security team rounded the corner. Jake's demolitions expert threw a flash grenade while the team dove through the doorway. The explosion bought them precious seconds to reach cover on the other side. Section 7 was exactly what Dr. Price had described. A long corridor lined with cells containing children from dozens of different species. But the conditions were worse than Jake had imagined. The cells were barely large enough for the occupants. Many children showed signs of recent medical procedures. "Dear God," Martinez whispered. "How many are there?" Jake counted quickly as they moved down the corridor, opening cell doors. Over 200 children, just as intelligence had reported, ages ranging from very young to teenage, all bearing the haunted look of long-term captivity. The children pressed back against the walls of their cells when the doors opened. They had learned to fear any adult who appeared unexpectedly. But Kes spoke to them in gentle tones, explaining, in multiple languages, that they were being rescued. "We're taking you home," Jake told each group as they emerged from their cells. "Stay close together and do exactly what we say." Some children were too weak to walk far. Others had been sedated and could barely stay conscious. Jake's team would have to carry the weakest while protecting all of them during the escape. But as they organized the evacuation, new alarms started sounding. These were different from the general security alerts. Dr. Price had warned them about this. Webb was activating the facility's self-destruct system rather than let his research and subjects be captured. "We have maybe 20 minutes before this place blows," Martinez reported after checking his scanner. "The entire asteroid is rigged with demolition charges." Jake looked at the crowd of weak and frightened children they were trying to evacuate. 200 victims plus his rescue team. There was no way to get everyone back to the transport in 20 minutes, not while fighting through armed security forces. But Jake had not come this far to abandon any of the children. There had to be another way out. He grabbed Kes and pulled up the facility schematics on the portable computer. "Emergency escape pods," Kes said, pointing to locations throughout the facility. Dr. Price mentioned them but said they were disabled. "Can you enable them?" Jake asked. Kes studied the technical displays. "Maybe, but would need to reach main computer core to override lockout commands. That is in the most heavily defended section." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. He could not save everyone by staying together. The team would have to split up. Some would evacuate children through the escape pods while others fought their way to the computer core. "Martinez, take half the children back to the transport. Use the route we came in. Kes and I will get the escape pods working for the rest." "Jake, that's suicide. The computer core is on the other side of the facility. You'll never make it through Webb's security." "Maybe not. But these children don't deserve to die because one old rancher was too careful." Jake selected the strongest children who could move quickly and follow orders. About 80 kids who might be able to reach escape pods if the systems were activated. The rest would go with Martinez through the known safe route. As the groups separated, Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. If he failed to reach the computer core, 80 children would die in the explosion. But if he did not try, they all would die anyway. The journey to the facility's central core was a running battle through corridors filled with smoke and debris. Webb's guards had orders to stop the intruders at any cost. They fought with desperation, knowing their own lives depended on preventing the escape. Jake's smaller team moved fast and hit hard. The children stayed low and followed orders perfectly. They had learned discipline in the worst possible way, but it kept them alive now when it mattered most. Kes worked his technological magic on every security barrier they encountered. Doors that should have been locked opened at his touch. Automated defenses turned themselves off when he asked them politely. His strange gift with machines was saving all their lives. But the guards were getting organized. As Jake's group approached the computer core, they found the final corridor blocked by a squad of heavily armed soldiers. These were not just security guards, but military professionals with combat experience. The firefight was intense and brutal. Jake's team was outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the soldiers did not. They were fighting to save children's lives while the soldiers were just following orders for money. One by one, Jake's superior tactics and desperate determination won out. But the victory came at a cost. 2 of his team members were wounded, and most of their ammunition was gone. They barely had enough firepower left to reach the computer core. Kes accessed the main computer while Jake watched for more guards. The facility's self-destruct countdown showed 8 minutes remaining. Even if they activated the escape pods now, there might not be enough time for evacuation. "Can you stop the self-destruct?" Jake asked. "No. Webb has manual overrides that I cannot reach from here, but I can delay the countdown and activate emergency systems." Kes worked frantically at the computer interface. His pearl-colored eyes reflected the display screens as he communicated with the facility's artificial intelligence. Jake had never seen the young Zelani push his abilities so hard. "Done," Kes finally announced. "Escape pods are active and countdown is delayed 15 minutes, but we must go now. System will detect my changes soon." They ran back through the facility corridors as alarms blared even louder. The children followed without question, trusting Jake and Kes to lead them to safety. Most had never even seen an escape pod, but they understood it meant freedom. The escape pod bay was chaos when they arrived. 80 children trying to figure out unfamiliar technology, while automated systems prepared the small vehicles for launch. Each pod could hold maybe 8 people if they squeezed together tightly. Jake helped load children into the pods while Kes programmed navigation systems. The pods would automatically fly to the nearest inhabited system where rescue ships could collect them. It was not perfect, but it was their only chance. The last pod launched just as Webb's security forces reached the bay. Jake watched through the viewport as 10 small escape vehicles accelerated away from the doomed asteroid. 80 children were safe. The mission was a success, but Jake and Kes were still trapped inside the facility with the countdown showing 3 minutes remaining.